Ekaterina Kalinina was born Ekaterina Lorberg into an ethnic Estonian farmhands family on July 2, 1882 in the village of Isna near Pida, in Estonia, then part of Russian Empire. She was an active revolutionary while working at a textile factory in Estonia. In 1905 she met Mikhail Kalinin while in St. Petersburg. They married in Riga in 1906 and lived in Kalinin's home in the village of Verkhnaya Troitsa, in western Russia, until 1910, when they moved back to St. Petersburg. Before the revolution Kalinina worked in a bottle factory, and was a member of the Bolshevik Party. Ekaterina and Mikhail had 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters. She and her children accompanied Mikhail Kalinin when he was sentenced to internal exile in Siberia in 1916. Following their revolution, the family moved to Moscow. On March 30, 1919, her husband was named head of the party's executive committee, and became head of the Central Executive Committee on December 30, 1922. She was one of the most politically active spouses of the Soviet leadership. Initially the Kalinin family lived in a Kremlin apartment which they shared with Leon Trotsky and his family. Kalinina later served as the deputy director of a weaving mill in the aftermath of the revolution. In 1924, she left Moscow and her family for the Caucasus to launch an illiteracy campaign in the region, but returned to Moscow in the same year. It is not known whether she had any success. She then became the manager of a state grain farm in a remote district near Novosibirsk in the early 1930s, and served as a member of the Soviet Supreme Court until 1938. She and her friends criticized Stalin's policies, and informers had relayed this information to Stalin, and on October 25, 1938, Ekaterina was arrested on fabricated charges of being a Trotskyist. At the time of her arrest, Ekaterina and her husband Mikhail weren't living together. She was tortured in Lefortovo prison, and on April 22, 1939, was sentenced to 15 years in a labor camp. She served her sentence there until December 14, 1945, when a special decree of the Presidium ordered her release, which was signed by the secretary of the Presidium and not by her husband. Her release occurred about 6 months before Mikhail Kalinin's death. She was then sent into internal exile shortly after. Her official rehabilitation happened in 1954, when she finally received a document stating there was no evidence against her anti-Soviet activities. She died on December 22, 1960, in Moscow, aged 70.